Uh, this DVD is a talk I gave in 2016, 3 years ago. And it is important to remember that though the title says Mechanics of Human Evolution, my main purpose in this talk is to limit it to a handicap we are facing in our spiritual growth. We are all seekers and very earnest about being enlightened. But very early, we find that we are faced with a handicap. And that handicap is our personal mind. From birth, our personal mind has dictated our activity, our thinking, our knowledge, because the education we have, the society we live in, is using the personal mind for its activities. And we soon find that this personal mind is preventing us from finding satisfaction. We are trying hard, we read books, we hear lectures, and yet we find that there is not an answer, because at all times the personal mind and the personal emotions interfere with our efforts for spiritual growth. And we try our best to overcome that, but if we cannot find a process, it's very difficult. So my aim in this talk is to give some suggestions how to handle the personal mind and the personal emotions. That's the main hurdle for any seeker to progress further. So as we go along, you'll hear the suggestions I give. So it is more of a practical talk than a theosophical, intellectual lecture. If it was to be a theosophical lecture, it would be higher states of consciousness. Our evolution is a process of reaching higher states of consciousness, because consciousness is the currency of life, and the more we have that consciousness is the greater our understanding with nature and serving the purpose of our existence. So this talk is limited to first finding a solution to not allow the personal mind and the personal emotions to dictate our activities. As we go along, you could also look at this chart, and it gives a summary of what we are talking about. This written there, animal soul is the lower mind, which I'm talking of. The personal mind is called the lower mind, and the personal emotions are desires.
Excuse me, Fali. Whoever drive the Toyota 4Runner, white, you need to go in the driveway because they might pull your car.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't see any.
Yeah, they'll let it pull in the driveway right now.
Okay. I didn't see any yellow there, so I'm working.
So you see, as I said, the seeker at once finds the block. The desires and the lower mind prevent evolution of consciousness, and that is given a term called animal soul. If and when we elevate our thinking and elevate our desires, then we move into what is higher mind and aspirations and ideals. We get the human stage, human life, soul. And if and when we begin to implement our ideals, we get into a state of virtue, which is a spiritual soul. So these are the three stages that a seeker goes through. And today's talk is mainly with moving from animal soul to human soul. Another talk will be required to move the human soul to a spiritual soul, which will deal with higher states of consciousness. After the talk, we can have question and answer, and I'll be happy to answer the questions.
So we are going to pause it here so that if you have some questions, Fali can answer them.
But you know that this subject is very interesting. Mr. Fali is here, so I want to leave some time so everybody can have a question, so he can give an answer. For this video, we already posted on the YouTube, so we can send it to everybody so you can watch it and learn more about it. But since Mr. Fali is here, so we can have a question and then he can answer, because we have another hour, that this is very valuable time for us. Right?
This talk stopped at the mic is on.
Yes, sir. Mike.
You can hear me?
No.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at this stage, I made the point that our personality initially is a handicap for seekers. I told you, we have desires, we have a craving, which is a quality of the lower mind. And for seekers, that is a handicap. So if and when we have ideas elevate to ideals and our cravings rise to aspiration, then the quality of the personality is improved. And that is called purification. It's not that it's a bad, personality is bad, but it is temporary. And we function through that temporary personality in our interaction. Even though I'm speaking, it's my personality that is talking. So when the integration takes place from the lower to the higher, then you get this purification of the lower mind. If two circles intersect, there's a common area. That is their integrating area. If the circles integrate more, like the higher and the lower, the integration is greater and greater. So the process of converting the personality into an asset requires that we elevate our ideas into ideals, elevate our desires into aspirations, elevate our actions into altruism. When you have this process going on, ideals, aspirations, altruism, the energy of the higher mind begins to awaken the personality and make it grow. And when the personality improves, then only the seeker can then move on to the higher stage. So this is the major handicap and a stage that must be resolved before a seeker can say, I will now grow unlimited, because this personality is a block, and until we convert it into an asset, we cannot grow further. And the process is that we have to have ideals in our thoughts, aspirations in our cravings, altruism in our action, and that energy that we activate automatically elevates our evolution. You see, our growth is natural. Everything in nature growing. A child grows, we cannot control the growth, it just grows naturally. But we have interfered with that process of growth and think that we have to grow ourselves. We cannot grow ourselves until the personality which is blocking our growth is converted into an aid. I told you the process. So what we have here is the following steps will be necessary. If and when the higher mind begins to influence the personality, we gain a state of stability. You see, stability, now this building has got a foundation. Every activity we do here depends on the foundation remaining supportive of our building. The day the foundation is weakened, this building cannot be used. So in our life, we also require a foundation which is called stability. And that stability allows us to activate in different ways, like we are using the lodge in different ways, but the foundation doesn't change. It supports all activity. When we awaken that stable energy of nature, all activity we do will be supported by that stability. But along with stability, we require another faculty called adaptability. Times demand change, and if you only remain a foundation, no structure, there is no purpose in the foundation. So along with stability, we require adaptability to convert our evolution as we progress. But the benefit of that adaptability, I told you, depends on the integration we have with the higher mind. The greater the integration, the easier to adapt for the future. So there is stability, integration, which leads to purification, and that is automatically creates progress. So these are the steps that we seeker has to start with to overcome the handicap of the personal mind and the personal emotions. When the personal mind is imbued with ideals and the personal emotion has aspirations and the activity is altruistic, then and only then can we start the journey for further evolution. That is why there's a danger in reading about higher states and thinking that that's not a bad thing, but to know the steps necessary to reach the higher steps requires this basic function of modifying our desires, elevating our ideas, improving our activities. These are all actions, and unless we take the action, the knowledge we get from reading cannot be implemented. So this is the message of this talk, is to begin to improve our. Now the way we can do it is not by thinking. That's one difficulty we have. We think, I can think my way out of my difficulties. But the very thinking caused the problem. If the thinking causes the problem, then the thinking cannot solve that problem. But we keep on trying to solve the problem. And the real answer is that life is not a problem. It's a process. So if I don't give the term problem, I look for no solution. I just move on. These are phases. So if we decrease the idea of problem, we have energy for moving on. But if I waste my time on solving problems when there is no real problem, then I have no energy for growth or for other useful activities. So we must understand that life is not a problem. It is an experience to be gone through. And in that experience, you will have a plus and a minus, difficulties and easiness. We do not presume that life will automatically be smooth or a plus. There cannot be a plus without a minus. So we have to accept cycles in our life, and if we don't resist the cycle, it will pass off. But if we resist and look for solutions, then the cycle will be prolonged. So we'll have bad cycles and good cycles. Our duty is to shorten the bad and lengthen the good. That's the job of every seeker. He has to decrease the bad cycle and lengthen the good cycle. And this can only happen if he contributes his consciousness to the quality of life. So this is why every seeker should understand the mechanics of evolution and not waste their energy in processes that do not give any benefit. Lot of seekers keep on trying, and then ultimately they say, no, this is a fake. There's no such thing as enlightenment. There's no such thing as growth. All this is fraud. And I suspect that many suicides that are taking place now is an outcome of people feeling the futility of life. They tried, they made efforts, but everywhere they didn't succeed. So they say, where is the point of prolonging my life when there is no opening in it? I should go. And people are more sensitive, and when they get this negativity in the atmosphere, the cycle is not good, they depart. So this is one explanation. Any questions you have?
At the beginning of your lecture, you mentioned about the source. But can you clarify, please, what does it mean, non-manifestation period?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, we know that the fundamental law of cycles, night and day, even the blinking of an eye is a cycle. I blink, I can't see, but I'm cleaning my eye. If I don't blink, I'll damage my eye. It's a cycle. So all this manifestation we see is a manifestation. We know that there are planets and solar system and galaxies. This cannot be permanent because the law of cycles requires that all this goes back to the source. And when it goes back to the source, there is non-manifestation for a period equal to it's called a manvantara. When there is manifestation, it's called a manvantara. when there is a non-manifestation, it's called a pralaya. So there's a pralaya and a manvantara falling one after the other. So that is why I meant non-manifestation.
Thank you.
Fali, can you comment on the role of meditation in terms of our daily life?
Pardon?
The role of meditation
Yeah.
in daily
Now,
life.
the only connection we have with the higher and lower self is the mind. It shows the mind, that common between the rectangle and the triangle. The base of the triangle is our mind. Part of it is higher and part of it is lower. As I said, the personality cannot evolve on its own. It says that you can improve, you will solve all your problems, but we know that up to a point only it can help us. So when we want to evolve, we have to access the higher mind. Now to access the higher mind, we have to temporarily set aside the lower mind. When we set aside the lower mind, then the energy of the higher mind enters the personality, and that is meditation. So people can meditate in different ways, but the intention is to temporarily decrease mental activity of the personal mind and then allow the higher mind, the finer energies, to enter our system. So when we meditate regularly, we find that the qualities in our thinking increases for the better, because the higher mind energies enter the personality and elevate it, and as I said, it becomes an asset and not a handicap. So meditation is unavoidable for every seeker, but it's up to them to adopt that meditation that most suits their personality. So the intention is always to elevate the quality of consciousness with which we function. But you must meditate. Thinking is not meditation. Reading books, hearing this lecture is not meditation. One has to sit down and do it systematically, and slowly it will take root. Like any seed you sow, unless you water it, it cannot grow. So the only way we can water our growth is to meditate and enjoy the fruit of that seed which we have sown.
Me? Yes. I would like to listen about what are your thoughts
Pardon?
about what you think. There are different versions, or I don't know different how many. About oh my God. When we die, okay, there are versions that we go through the next another lifetime and another lifetime, we come back, and we are still on the process of evolving.
Yeah.
So my kind of question will be, okay, I'm in this lifetime, I'm doing my job of working, fighting my ego and the personality, so I can go, I'm a seeker, so I can go through the process of growing. Okay, but at some point I go back, and then I evolve, and I evolve into being a human being, okay, regular human being, so I'm in that process. And then finally I die, but I still have, maybe I reach certain level of progress. As a human being, when I come in my next lifetime, where I was in my previous life, that I was able to handle my ego, am I going to start there where I stopped, or am I going to start all over again? Like, you failed, you start again from the beginning.
You see, most people take death as some ending and a new beginning. There is no new beginning. journey after death is, the itinerary of the journey after death is created, self-created when you're alive. When you're alive, you create the itinerary of your next life after a pause. The pause involves, like you eat food, you digest the food. So the pause involves digesting the previous meal of life. All the activities you will see clearly, and you will be able to absorb the lessons you learned. That's the reason for the post-mortem state. There is no new energy after we die till we are born again. So at the moment of death, the brain transfers all its activities it did in a flash to the causal body, which is in the higher mind. And the causal body then utilizes that information to create the tendencies in the next life of that same person. So it goes on and on. There is no only two in thinking. He will display extreme selfishness, total disregard for anybody or anything, because his mind is always dictated by the two lower levels of the force divisions. And slowly, and that is called animal soul. He's a human being, but his actions are animalistic. There are people like that, and they are using only the two lower levels. If you use the third and fourth level,
Oh, okay. My question is about altruism.
pardon?
Go closer.
Her question is,
He
She cannot hear you.
Okay.
Go closer.
This way.
Scream at him. Please.
My question is about altruism.
Altruism.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's my understanding that when we are transitioning to these different levels,
Yeah.
we start centering in self first,
Yeah.
and then we start expanding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you talk about altruism, are you talking about the care for the whole humanity
Yeah.
and how that affects the care of the group that you were born into, like your family or your friends around you, the groups that you belong to,
Yeah.
and what is like the focus should be, what the focus should be
Now
to
you
get
see-
to the altruism?
Yeah. Now, every age has a different procedure for evolution. There is no one process successful throughout time. We have got through ages, and the present age is called the Iron Age, Kali Yuga, Iron Age. In the Iron Age, everything is more difficult. The more we try to grow, the more is the resistance. It's an actual Iron Age we are passing through at this time. So when we have the Iron Age, the requirements for spiritual growth are modified. It is recognized that in this atmosphere, it's very easy, difficult to grow spiritually. Every area you'll find resistance. The society will not support you. Your career will not grow if you only talk of spirituality. And we can see that all the time, everywhere. Social media, you talk about like that, they will ridicule you for saying these absurd things and things like that. So the procedure for progress in Kali Yuga has been simplified. It's meditation, study, spiritual study, and service. That's what we mean by altruism. These three, if you do it regularly, you are in a way looking after your future spiritual welfare. It may not take place in this life because it's difficult, but you are laying the seeds that will grow in the future life. But the seeds are meditation, study, and service. In the golden age, the specification will be much harder because the conditions will be more conducive to spiritual growth. So they have relaxed it for the iron age, and like a waiver, and this is the formula for this age. And seekers don't find it very difficult to meditate, to study. We have got a lot of information, and to serve as best they can in society. Just serve, and that's good enough for the present lifetime in Kali Yuga.
You mentioned that there was no evolution of the soul after we die, and I can remember in India that there are ceremonies in which we would pray for our deceased ancestors, and we're told that when we pray or send energy to those deceased ones, that they receive that energy and it's helpful to them. How does that fit in with when you said there is no evolution of the soul?
Now, actually, to be frank, the prayers we say for the soul is more of a consolation for the living people. You see, you lost somebody and it's a loss. You feel that. So you feel that I must help that person, and there are prayers for that. I don't say we don't do the prayers, we should do it, but knowing that the moment after death, the laws of postmortem state will prevail. But the prayers are good, we feel satisfied, and we don't feel guilty. So it is not a bad thing at all for prayers, but we should know the limitation.
It's mean no connection. We pray or meditate with the person who already in another dimension.
It's a long lecture, what happens after death. Immediately after death, all the personality, all of it does not die. 3 items die, 1 item, our emotional body, does not die with physical death, because the soul requires a vehicle to be present. At present it's in the physical system, the soul. When the physical system goes away, the soul wakes up or is carried by the emotional body on the emotional plane. We have got a physical plane here, there's an emotional plane, there's a mental plane, a psychic plane, spiritual, all the way to the top. And when the death occurs, the soul does not function. It has no end, it's just intact. The emotions that we carry at death play out in the emotional world. The emotion are not energy, more energy. What energy we carry at the moment of death, that will, like a lamp with oil, it will, and the emotions will play out. When the emotions die out, no more energy, then the second death takes place, and then the soul moves on from the emotional plane to the soul plane and enjoys a lot of temporary heaven. Depending on your thought process and your actions will dictate how you experience that bliss consciousness, temporary. And then we have a thirst for life. Like when you eat a lot of food, you say, I'll never eat again. But in a few hours you feel hungry. So the same with life. When we digest all the experiences, we feel a thirst, and there's a return process and we come back.
You mentioned that we are in the louder. We are the Kali Yuga age, okay? So as we are seekers, and it's going to be difficult to work this progress. My question is more like, when we come in a certain family, certain group, certain country, is there somehow that what we need to work on as the soul has all the information that needs what it needs? Do we have to come like in a special country, special family? So those things that are, as humans, that we have to work with the fighter personality is, to me, sometimes I see it as if it is like a game. You need to work on I don't know how the source or how it works. You need to work on this, and that's what's going to be difficult for me as an individual, and that's why I'm in this family working on what I need to work, and that's why I married this man, and that's why I have this boss, and that's why, because it's like, that's what I need, my soul, or I don't know if I'm being
Now we're entering a subject called karma. Karma means action, and nature always tries to re-establish harmony. That is, the law of nature is harmony. When we disturb that harmony, knowingly or unknowingly, that disturbance has to be cleared by the person causing the disturbance. So as we live our lives, we are gathering a lot of karma. Every time we violate a law of nature, it requires an adjustment. So this adjustment is not possible in one lifetime. It takes many, many lifetimes. So a particular lifetime when we enter, partially, if we are aware, we can rectify some of the past karma, not all. And that is why we come into families with an opportunity to rectify the past karma. If we cannot take advantage of that, then we will again repeat the same adverse conditions. But if we can handle it, then our life will move on to handling other karmas which we generated in the past life.
Thank you.
I have a question. Taking what all you've been saying, Fali, about all this, how do you, why are we having an increase in population with people? If we're having this constant rebirth of our soul, why is our overall population just in the earth increasing? Where are all these other souls are coming from?
Now, we talked of involution and evolution. At the halfway stage, the number of souls evolving is constant. Before that, new human beings are entering the system. Once that stage is over, the total number of souls is constant. That number is not given to us by the masters. Some of the souls are living and some are incarnating. These are cycles. At present, the number of souls evolving is greater than the number of souls that are yet to incarnate. But when always there's a catastrophe, nature has a method of adjusting the cycle. There could be a mass extinction, and suddenly the number of souls incarnate on earth would be less than what is there. This has happened in the past. Whole species have been wiped out. A meteor strikes the earth, but nobody is eliminated. If you die, it doesn't mean you disappear. You will reappear, but the cycles will take place. At present, because of the number of people increasing, the chances of a disaster is also increasing. Okay.
Any other question? Okay, let's thank Fali for this presentation. So there are refreshments available. Please enjoy.